You are listening to Heat, Book 4 of the Bloodbound series, by Amy Blankenship and R.K. Melton. Read to you by K.B. Stanford.
Chapter 1. Micah was resting in bed, wrapped up in so many bandages he was starting to resemble a mummy. He couldn't help but smile softly as Mrs. Tully clucked around him like a mother hen and occasionally shook her head. He also wasn't complaining about the amount of painkiller she'd stuck in his arm. He could see himself in the dresser mirror across the room and started to cock an eyebrow, but decided against it when it instantly hurt. They'd already assured him Anthony was dead, but he couldn't help wishing the alpha werewolf was still alive, so he could torture the bastard the same way he'd been tortured. The story they'd told him had sounded like a quick death. He wouldn't have made it quick. I think you shifters are going to end up being the death of me, Mrs. Tully exclaimed softly. The shifters, both jaguars and cougars, held a soft spot in her heart. She'd delivered every single one of them, and had been very close to their mother. Just look at the shape you got yourself into. Micah pointed at the ceiling, feeling dizzy when the ceiling fan kept going round and round. It wasn't my fault that I got kidnapped and tortured. Mrs. Tully softly tapped him on the forehead with the tips of her fingers. I beg to differ, young Skywalker. If the stories I heard were true, you stood up to that horrid werewolf, and that's what got you kidnapped. So you're saying I brought it on myself? Don't interrupt your elders. Mrs. Tully came back with a stern look. I wasn't finished. As I was saying, you stood up to that mongrel dog, and I have to say, it was something long overdue. Micah looked pointedly over at Quinn with an "I told you so" smirk. He wasn't ready to forgive his brother. He'd warned Quinn about Anthony and had been told to stand down. He hoped Big Brother was happy, because now he couldn't stand up. Stop that! Mrs. Tully growled and slapped him on the top of his head. The action made his lingering headache start to thump, and he squeezed his eyes shut. Hey, I'm hurt here, Micah complained. You'll make it worse if you keep up this sibling rivalry, Mrs. Tully retorted, and gave the same warning look to Quinn. I need to call my granddaughter and let her know where I am. The poor dear will be worried if I'm not home to answer the phone. Mrs. Tully didn't wait for anyone to show her where the phone was. This wasn't the first time she'd been to the Wilder residence. She missed a step when she noticed Michael sitting quietly in a chair in the shadowed corner of the room. It wasn't like the charming vampire to be so dark and brooding. When the door closed behind her, all eyes turned back to Micah. It's good to see you finally back home where you belong, Stephen said with a soft smile, trying to hide the fact that he was worried. Even though Micah was home, something was telling Stephen he wasn't out of danger. Micah was pale, and his eyes were a bit too shiny for Stephen's liking. Micah returned the smile, but was starting to get drowsy. It's just good to be out of that hellhole. You were very reckless this time, Quinn stated from his position near the window, and crossed his arms over his chest. You could have died down in that basement if we hadn't seen that message you sent to Alicia. Micah looked around the room for his little sister and frowned. Speaking of Alicia, where is she? I thought for sure she'd be here. She's staying over at a friend's house until this all blows over, Kat answered. She glanced at Quinn, wondering how long he was going to wait until he called their sister and told her to come home.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?